Welcome, dear subscribers and curious listeners of my channel. The Harry Potter adaptations are beloved by millions, but even they are far from perfect. Sometimes they contain scenes that don't inspire awe, but confusion. Some of them aren't just awkward, they're illogical, meaningless, and deeply baffling, especially for viewers unfamiliar with the books. These moments feel ripped from a different film altogether, disrupting the rhythm of the story and distorting the perception of key characters. Today, I'll walk you through the strangest, most inexplicable, and disappointing scenes in the Harry Potter films. Make yourself comfortable. It's going to be interesting. Enjoy the video. Number 1. Harry and Voldemort in the Clock Tower, Deathly Hallows Part 2. The final showdown between Harry and Voldemort was supposed to be a tense, magical duel between two great rivals. Instead, viewers witnessed something closer to a back-alley brawl. When Voldemort corners Harry, it looks like the end, but instead of unleashing a deadly spell, he suddenly begins strangling him. Yes, strangling! The great Dark Lord, master of lethal magic, resorts to physical assault. And Harry? Rather than defending himself with magic, he grabs Voldemort by the neck and jumps off the tower with him. Brilliant, except Voldemort can fly and Harry can't. While plot armor saves the boy who lived, the scene itself evokes laughter and disappointment. It was meant to be epic, and instead came off as ridiculous. Number 2. Harry's Breakdown, Prisoner of Azkaban. Alfonso Cuarón crafted one of the most atmospheric and haunting entries in the franchise. But even in this cinematic masterpiece, there's one scene that raises a big question. Is this really Harry? After learning that Sirius Black supposedly betrayed his parents, Harry breaks down. He sits on a rock, sobs, then erupts in tears and fury. "I'm going to kill him," he growls through gritted teeth. But is this the reaction we expected from Harry Potter? He should have been stunned, frozen in shock, withdrawn, not throwing a fit. But the moment feels out of character and more like a screenwriting misfire than an intentional emotional beat. Number 3. The Slug Club Dinner, Half-Blood Prince. Professor Slughorn was the king of social gatherings. His Slug Club, a collection of gifted students and future elites, was his way to fame and influence. But the dinner he hosts turns into a festival of awkwardness. When Ginny walks in, Harry suddenly stands up, drawing attention to himself, while everyone else stays seated. Why does he do this? What was the point? But the strangest moment comes later. Cormac McLaggen, seated next to Hermione, starts licking his fingers right in front of her. It's so bizarre and gross that it shatters the entire scene. Yes, teenagers can be awkward. But this was over the top and completely inappropriate for such a formal setting. Number 4. The Death Eaters attack on the Burrow, Half-Blood Prince. One of the most senseless scenes in the entire franchise. Bellatrix Lestrange and a band of Death Eaters attack the Burrow, the Weasleys' home. But not to kill, not to kidnap, not even to threaten, just to run around a field and set some bushes on fire. The scene begins with a silly shoelace conversation between Harry and Ginny. Then suddenly, fire, chaos, shouting, but no one is harmed. The plot doesn't move forward. And in the next film, the house is perfectly intact. How did the Death Eaters even get there when the Burrow was supposedly protected by the Order of the Phoenix? The answer is simple. The writers threw logic out the window for the sake of a flashy scene. Number 5. Arrival of Beauxbatons and Durmstrang, Goblet of Fire. The 4th installment was supposed to broaden the magical world, introducing new schools, cultures, and traditions. Instead, viewers got cartoonish stereotypes. Beauxbatons is portrayed as a girls-only school where students glide into the Great Hall like Disney fairies. Durmstrang, on the other hand, is an all-male group of stick-wielding warriors marching and growling. Aesthetic? Questionable. Logic? Absent. Atmosphere? Ruined. In the books, both schools were co-ed. Boys and girls attended both. But to a viewer who hasn't read the books, the scene sends a completely false message. It's misleading and damages the richness of the world J.K. Rowling created. Number 6, Ron and the Horcrux, Deathly Hallows, Part 1. When Ron takes it upon himself to destroy the Horcrux, he faces visions spawned by his darkest fears. It's one of the most emotionally charged moments in the book, but in the film, it's almost laughable. The Horcrux conjures spectral versions of Harry and Hermione who start kissing passionately and for an uncomfortably long time. The camera lingers on their semi-nude forms so long it feels more like a soap opera than a character-defining scene. And Ron, instead of immediately smashing the Horcrux in rage, just stands there, watching, thinking, suffering, only after a long moment as he finally strikes. The pacing collapses and the scene veers into farce, losing its emotional power. Number 7, Harry and Hermione's Dance, Deathly Hallows, Part 1. The radio hums, the tent is dim, outside the world is crumbling. Ron is gone, Hermione is grieving. Then Harry walks over, holds out a hand, and invites her to dance. No words, just a soft smile. She hesitates, then accepts. What follows is a slow, awkward shuffle. They sway, laugh nervously, and glance at each other like strangers at a school dance. For a moment it almost works, until it doesn't. The silence grows too thick, the smiles too forced, and the camera lingers just long enough to make it feel off. This scene doesn't exist in the book. There's no dancing, no soft lighting, no sudden chemistry. Rowling wrote, Hermione turned away. The radio kept playing. Harry sat in silence, the weight of everything pressing on him. That silence mattered. It was real. But the film rewrites it, slips in a moment that feels out of place. Not romantic, not comforting, just uncertain. It's not the bond between brother and sister. It's not a spark of love. It's something else entirely. And no one knows quite what. Number 8. Harry and Hermione's Hair, Philosopher's Stone. In the book, it's one of the first things we learn about Harry. He had a thin face, knobbly knees, black hair, and bright green eyes. His hair was always untidy. Always. No matter what Petunia did to flatten it. It stood up in every direction, a stubborn crown of chaos. But in Philosopher's Stone, the movie gives us a neat, perfectly combed version of him. His fringe doesn't rebel. His hair lies flat. It looks like it was carefully styled just before each take. The messiness, the one visual trait that made Harry feel real, is gone, replaced with polish. Hermione's hair suffers the same fate. In the books, it's her signature. Bushy brown hair and rather large front teeth. Bushy, wild, a mane of nervous energy. But Emma Watson's early portrayal gives us soft, tamed curls that fall in perfect waves. It's pretty, yes, but not Hermione. Her book appearance matched her brain. Untamed, unapologetic, real. The film softened her edges, made her easier to look at, but lost a piece of who she was. Hollywood beauty slipped into Hogwarts, and magic slipped out. Number 9. Harry and Ginny's Awkward Kiss, Half-Blood Prince. The room of requirement glows softly. Shelves vanish, silence stretches, and then Ginny walks toward Harry like a ghost. No words, no build-up. She kisses him gently, quickly, as if fulfilling a task. He barely reacts, no spark, no surprise, just a blank stare and stiff posture. It's supposed to be the beginning of something powerful, two hearts finally connecting, but instead it feels like a quiet misunderstanding. The kiss fades into the scene like it doesn't want to be noticed. In the book, it's fire. Without thinking, without planning it, without worrying about the fact that 50 people were watching, Harry kissed her. It's impulsive, passionate, real. Everyone sees it and no one cares. That's the magic. But in the film, they're alone. Hiding, whispering. The moment shrinks into nothing, even the chemistry vanishes. What should have been a pivotal turning point for their relationship ends up feeling like two acquaintances sharing a polite goodbye. Number 10. Dumbledore's Dramatic Fall, Half-Blood Prince. The spell hits, Dumbledore's body lifts, weightless for a moment, and then begins to fall, But instead of a swift collapse, the film slows everything down. His robes flutter like wings. The sky weeps blue. It looks almost graceful, as if the headmaster is floating, not dying. The camera watches every second, stretching the moment into a ballet. The silence grows too long. It feels unnatural. Audiences stop feeling grief and start wondering, why is this taking so long? In the book, Rowling writes with quiet finality, "For a split second, Dumbledore looked directly into Harry's eyes, and then he was falling slowly backward like a great rag doll over the battlements. Simple, brutal, honest, no drama, just shock. The tragedy lies in how fast it happens, how even the greatest can fall in a heartbeat." The movie, however, trades that realism for spectacle. Slow motion, music, swell, visual poetry, but it robs the scene of weight. Dumbledore doesn't die, he performs. It doesn't match who he was. Albus Dumbledore was humble, unshowy, and human in his final moments. His death was never about grandeur. It was about sacrifice. Snape's spell should have dropped him like a stone, leaving silence in its wake. But the film gives us stylized sorrow, not real grief. And when Harry runs to the tower and screams into the night, the emotions feel late, forced. A moment that should have crushed us instead leaves us strangely detached. Number 11, Neville's inspiring speech, Deathly Hallows, Part 2. The courtyard is cracked with silence. Harry lies still in Hagrid's arms. Voldemort steps forward, triumphant. And then, from the broken stone steps, Neville Longbottom rises. This is his moment. The quiet boy, the unlikely hero, the one no one noticed in year one. In the book, he becomes a symbol of defiance. Rowling wrote, "The Sorting Hat gave a twitch and a flame burst forth. Neville broke free and drew the sword of Gryffindor from within it." Powerful, earned, inspiring, but the film takes a strange turn. Instead of fire in his voice, Neville delivers awkward lines. "You in what army?" he says, with an unsure smirk. Then there's a joke about loving Luna, dropped like a pebble into silence. It lands flat. The moment should have burned with courage. Instead, it flickers with misplaced humor. The pauses are too long. The rhythm is off. The camera cuts to reactions that add nothing. What was meant to rouse the students feels like a school play teetering off script. Neville isn't comic relief, not here. He's the boy who stood up to friends in year one and faced Nagini alone in year 7. His speech should have carried weight, something that made even the Death Eaters falter. But in the film, the power drains out. His courage becomes clumsy. The scene passes and the gravity of the moment passes with it. Number 12, Voldemort hugs Draco, Deathly Hallows, Part 2. The courtyard is silent. Ash drifts in the wind. Voldemort stands before the broken body of Harry Potter, convinced he's won. The Death Eaters gather. The captured students watch in horror. Then comes the moment that no one expected. Voldemort turns to Draco Malfoy. The boy hesitates, his face is pale, eyes lost. He walks forward like a puppet, his steps slow and unsure. And Voldemort opens his arms. The hug is clumsy. Voldemort's arms stretch around Draco's stiff body, fingers twitching with awkwardness. There's no warmth, no sincerity, just something disturbingly off. Even Draco doesn't know how to react. He gives a weak, terrified pat on Voldemort's back and stumbles away. The Dark Lord's face shows something between smugness and confusion. The whole scene hangs in the air like a bad joke. Instead of fear, it pulls nervous laughter from the audience. And just like that, Voldemort, the symbol of terror, becomes a meme. The absurdity is even clearer when compared to the book. In Deathly Hallows, Rowling wrote, Draco's expression was full of uncertainty. He moved toward his parents, eyes downcast. That's it. Quiet, subtle, no embrace, no bizarre contact. Voldemort didn't need affection, he demanded loyalty through fear. But in the movie, he suddenly behaves like a misguided uncle at a family reunion. It makes no sense. It erases the tension. The hug breaks Voldemort's character. He's never sought connection. He doesn't touch people. He kills them. This isn't a man who hugs. The moment was unscripted. Ralph Fiennes improvised it. And it shows it might have worked in another film for another villain. But here, it crashes into the tone like a falling chandelier. What should have been a scene of rising dread becomes a spectacle of discomfort. The hug wasn't just unearned, it was unforgettable, for all the wrong reasons. Number 13, Harry spies on Snape, Philosopher's Stone. Harry Potter crept down the stone corridor, the shadows swallowing his every step. He had no plan, no invisibility cloak, just a hunch and a reckless drive to eavesdrop. Inside the dim-lit office, voices rose, one sharp and cold, the other soft, oily. Snape and Professor Quirrell. Harry pressed closer to the door, heart pounding like a drum in his ears. The risk was enormous. Snape was not only feared by every student, he was also the most skilled legilimens at Hogwarts. One glance, and Harry would have been caught. But none of this seemed to cross his mind. This wasn't courage, it was raw, impulsive foolishness. Just hours earlier, Hagrid had warned him, "Yeah, stick to your classes and leave Snape alone." And still, here he was, standing inches from the man he now believed might be plotting to steal the Philosopher's Stone. Even Ron, who rarely hesitated when rules were being broken, had urged caution. Yet Harry marched straight into danger with the logic of a child chasing shadows. The scene falls apart under any real scrutiny. Why didn't he use the cloak Dumbledore gave him? He had it. He knew it worked. In the book, he uses it wisely during his night adventures. But in the film, he just walks into Snape's office, fully visible, in the middle of a school full of patrolling teachers and magical security. It strips the moment of realism even more absurd. Snape's door is wide open. The strictest, most private professor in Hogwarts leaves his office ajar during a secret conversation. In Philosopher's Stone, Rowling wrote, Snape's eyes were boring into Harry's. It was as though he was trying to read his mind. That's the man Harry risks confronting without protection. There's no build-up to this decision, no internal conflict. Just a random, poorly thought-out action that only works because the plot demands it. The Harry of the books learns to be cautious. The Harry in this scene just barges in, and somehow it works out, because the script says so. Number 14, Hermione erases her parents' memory. Deathly Hallows Part 1. The room was quiet, bathed in the soft light of a Sunday morning. A couple sat together sipping tea, unaware that their daughter had ever existed.
This was the haunting image offered by Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Part 1. Hermione Granger, standing alone in her childhood home, wand raised, uttering the words that would erase her from the minds of the only people who ever truly loved her outside the wizarding world. It was meant to be a moment of ultimate sacrifice, the kind that demonstrates not just loyalty to a cause, but the willingness to vanish entirely for it. Yet instead of inspiring awe, the scene brought something far more inconvenient, confusion. For all its emotional intention, the logic buckled under the weight of its own magic. Hermione's decision to modify her parents' memories was not originally present in Deathly Hallows, the book. In the novel, she says simply, "I've also modified my parents' memories so that they're convinced they're really called Wendell and Monica Wilkins, and that their life's ambition is to move to Australia." It is a clear statement grounded in practical precaution rather than theatrical tragedy. She never erases herself entirely. She hides their identities to protect them. The book gives her agency and precision. The film, on the other hand, crafts a different tale, one that is far more melodramatic but far less coherent. The difference lies in the execution. In the movie, Hermione casts a powerful charm that causes photographs to change, her image fading from frame after frame as if she were a ghost never born. Her mother continues drying the dishes, her father reads the newspaper, the house is untouched, there is no chaos, no aftermath, and most importantly, there is no explanation. The viewer is left to assume that Hermione has not just modified memories, but perhaps wiped out the very concept of herself from the lives of her parents. If such magic exists, and apparently it does, why has it never been used elsewhere? The problem is not with Hermione's character nor Emma Watson's performance, which is delicate and poised. The issue lies in what this moment implies for the rest of the wizarding world. If one student, however brilliant, can seamlessly and silently delete herself from two lives, then what stops others from doing the same? What stops the Order of the Phoenix from hiding more people in this way? Why not wipe memories of Death Eaters who attack? Why not erase knowledge of Grimmauld Place from all who might compromise it? The spell Hermione uses, Obliviate, has always existed in the canon. Gilderoy Lockhart used it, albeit clumsily. The Ministry of Magic used it routinely, but never with such apparent grace and finality. Even more troubling is the ethics. Memory charms are not trivial. They alter identity, sense of self, and often require extensive healing if misused. In Chamber of Secrets, Lockhart's wand backfires and obliterates his own memory, leaving him mentally fractured. That scene served as a warning. Magic, especially mental manipulation, comes at a cost. Yet the film's depiction of Hermione's charm ignores this cost entirely. Her parents remain blissfully unaware, as if memories can be plucked like weeds without any consequences. It's a romanticized notion of trauma, that forgetting is clean and that leaving someone you love can be done beautifully. And then there is the question of permanence. In the books, Hermione plans to restore her parents' memories after the war. She does not destroy their sense of family, only buries it temporarily beneath layers of false identity. It is, in its way, an act of protection, but the film doesn't clarify whether Hermione can undo what she's done. She looks haunted, as though she knows this might be forever. This ambiguity, though emotionally striking, raises yet another logical fault line. If this is a permanent spell, then it is too cruel to be brushed off in a single scene. If it is not, then the scene needs to show how it can be undone. The emotional weight that the film tries to load into this moment becomes undercut by all that is left unexplained. One cannot admire a sacrifice when the terms of that sacrifice are undefined. How long will the spell last? What happens if her parents meet someone who remembers Hermione? What about relatives, school photos, digital records? The wizarding world, though magical, has never been immune to practical realities. And in a war where every choice has consequences, this one feels less like a chess move and more like a scriptwriter's shortcut to drama. In a world where magical solutions often feel too convenient, Rowling has always tried to maintain rules and limits. Spells take effort. Potions have preparation. Memory, in particular, is sacred. In Goblet of Fire, Bertha Jorkins is tortured for information because her memory had been tampered with by magical means. Dumbledore remarks on how delicate and dangerous memory charms are. Powerful magic in the wrong hands can be disastrous. That sentiment is lost in this movie scene, which treats Obliviate like a solemn, silent goodbye rather than a dangerous manipulation. Fans have questioned why this particular change was made. Was it for visual drama? Was it to give Hermione an early arc of loss and separation? Or was it simply a way to add gravitas to the beginning of a film that otherwise spends its first hour meandering through forests? Whatever the intention, the execution turns a deeply intelligent character into someone who acts without the careful thought she is known for. Hermione is not reckless. She is methodical. She studies spells before using them. She calculates the moral and practical consequences. But in the film, her use of memory magic lacks this consideration. Number 15, Harry Breaks the Elder Wand, Deathly Hallows Part 2. Of all the changes the Harry Potter films made to the source material, few were as jarring and illogical as the moment in Deathly Hallows Part 2 when Harry, standing on the ruined bridge of Hogwarts, snaps the Elder Wand in half and tosses it into the abyss. The camera lingers for a moment on the shattered halves, tumbling into oblivion, as if inviting the audience to celebrate this spontaneous act of renunciation. Yet beneath this symbolic gesture lies a deep disconnect from both the internal logic of the wizarding world and the emotional trajectory of Harry's character. It is a decision that feels unearned, unnecessary, and ultimately inconsistent with everything we have learned about wands, magic, and responsibility throughout the story. In the book Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the fate of the Elder Wand is handled with far more reverence and intelligence. Harry, recognizing the danger of the wand's power, does not seek to destroy it. Instead, he chooses to return it to its rightful owner, Albus Dumbledore, by placing it back in his tomb. His reasoning is rooted in magical logic and emotional maturity. By dying a natural death as the wand's master, he hopes to end the wand's violent legacy. This gesture is quiet, humble, and thoughtful, encapsulating the growth Harry has undergone over 7 books. In the film, this logic is discarded in favor of a shallow cinematic moment. The Elder Wand is not a trinket. It is one of the 3 Deathly Hallows, a legendary artifact steeped in blood and ambition. Its core, the tail hair of a thestral, creatures only visible to those who have witnessed death, signifies its deep and dangerous magic. According to the Tales of Beedle the Bard, the Elder Wand was created by Death himself. Whether this origin is literal or mythological, the wand's power is beyond question. Grigorovich, a wand-maker, sought it. Grindelwald killed for it. Dumbledore mastered it. Voldemort desecrated a grave to possess it. To suggest that such an artifact can be undone with a simple snap is not only naive, but contradicts the very rules the series has painstakingly built. The film ignores the fact that wands can often be repaired, especially those imbued with great power. In Deathly Hallows, the only wand ever known to resist repair, Harry's Holly and Phoenix Feather wand, is eventually mended by the Elder Wand itself. "I'll put the Elder Wand back where it came from," Harry tells Ron and Hermione. "If I die a natural death like Ignotus, its power will be broken." These are words of foresight and humility, not rash destruction. By choosing to return the wand rather than destroy it, Harry shows trust in the future and understanding of magical law. The wand's power will fade with time and peace, not through violence. There's also the matter of magical tradition. Throughout the series, wands are depicted not just as tools but as sentient objects, choosing their masters and holding deep connections to them. Ollivander's entire character is built upon the philosophy that the wand chooses the wizard. To snap a wand in 2 is more than just breaking wood, it is severing a bond. It is an act of violence. That Harry would so casually sever the most powerful wand in existence, one he never even used in battle, seems shockingly out of character. He is not impulsive, he is not reckless, he does not destroy for the sake of gesture. Even the visuals of the scene are strange. The moment takes place in broad daylight, after the battle is over. The grounds of Hogwarts are bathed in soft light. There is a strange serenity to it all. And then, without explanation or build-up, Harry breaks the Elder Wand in 2. There is no sense of consequence, no reflection, no understanding of what this wand meant to Dumbledore or to the greater wizarding world. It's as if the filmmakers were afraid to trust the audience with nuance and chose instead a heavy-handed image. The implications of this act are unsettling. If the Elder Wand truly cannot be destroyed, as the law suggests, then Harry's action is not an ending, it is an oversight. What happens if someone retrieves the pieces? What if the wand is reforged? Is it truly powerless or simply dormant? The story offers no answers. In the book, the return of the wand to Dumbledore's tomb closes the loop. The master is dead, the wand sleeps, but in the film, the power is left to fate, a gamble Harry should never have taken. Let us also consider the broader thematic arc. The Deathly Hallows are not just magical objects, they represent human desires, the wand for power, the stone for resurrection, the cloak for humility. Harry chooses the cloak. He drops the stone, he returns the wand. Each act is deliberate and symbolic. But when he destroys the wand, the symmetry collapses. It's no longer a moral choice but an emotional reaction. The richness of the tale is flattened, its layers stripped away. Dumbledore himself would likely have disapproved. The man who warned against the temptation of power, who kept the Hallows secret for decades, understood that magic should be respected. In The Half-Blood Prince, he tells Harry, "You are the true master of death, because the true master does not seek to run away from death. He accepts that he must die and understands that there are far, far worse things in the living world than dying." Dumbledore did not fear the Elder Wand, he feared what people would do with it. That's why he planned for it to die with him. Harry's decision in the book honors that vision. The film ignores it. Number 16, Harry's Silence in the Forest, Deathly Hallows Part 2. He walked through the forbidden forest like a ghost in his own story. The sky above was a heavy grey, the trees stood still in anticipation, and the cold crept into his bones, but Harry Potter kept walking, each step taking him closer to the one thing he had always defied: death. The resurrection stone rolled in his palm as figures from his past, Lily, James, Sirius, Remus, appeared beside him, silent and solemn. He was ready. The music, the framing, the setting, all of it called for the most profound moment of the saga. And yet, as Harry stepped out into the clearing where Voldemort awaited, the tension collapsed into a hollow silence. He said nothing. Not to Voldemort, not to his parents, not to himself. And for all the build-up, for all the pathos layered into that long walk, the moment died with a whisper instead of a roar. The film Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 aimed to translate one of the most emotionally charged moments in the entire series to the screen. In the book, the walk to the forest is slow, thoughtful, layered with dread and love and resolve. Harry speaks to those who walk beside him, asking if dying hurts, wishing he had more time. The emotions are rich and textured, but the movie decides to strip it all down. It removes the dialogue, trims the silence, and lets Harry arrive like a blank figure walking to his doom. And when he stands before Voldemort, face to face with the monster who destroyed his childhood, he does not scream, he does not whisper, he does not even blink meaningfully, he just stands, and in doing so, the most personal sacrifice in the entire story falls painfully flat. There was so much space in that moment for a final word, something simple, something human, a farewell to Hermione and Ron, a whisper to his mother's face in the dark, a defiant stand against the man who murdered his family. Anything, even just his own name, reminding Voldemort whom he was killing. But nothing came. The silence wasn't noble, it wasn't dignified, it was awkward, and worse, it was untrue to the emotional complexity that had defined Harry for 7 books and 7 films. This was a boy who had fought every step of the way, who had never once walked away from a fight, who had always been fueled by love and rage and loyalty. But in this one moment, he had nothing to say. In the book, when Harry walks into the forest, his thoughts are filled with images of Ginny, of what might have been, of fear that presses against his lungs. He grips the snitch and whispers, "I am about to die." And the snitch opens, revealing the resurrection stone. That alone is a haunting, unforgettable line. But in the movie, we see the stone, we see the figures, but not the thought, not the emotion. We are not invited into Harry's mind, only left outside the glass, trying to interpret a boy's blank face. And that choice reduces the emotional power of the moment to something surface level. What makes this scene so frustrating is not just what was left out, but how much better it could have been with just a few words. A single line, even murmured, would have grounded the sacrifice. "Tell them I tried. I'm not afraid anymore. This is for you." These are not clichés. They are the language of someone giving up everything. The moment called for poetry or pain or clarity. Instead, we got hesitation and nothingness. The absence of sound became the absence of meaning. Consider what this moment means in the context of the entire saga. Harry has spent years grappling with the prophecy, with the weight of being the chosen one. He has lost everyone, his parents, his godfather, his mentors, and now, knowing he must let himself die to destroy the piece of Voldemort's soul within him, he walks toward the end. This should be the climax not just of a plot, but of a soul's journey. It should echo with the voices of the past and the hope for the future, but it lands like a stone in a dry well. There is no echo because there is no sound. Even Voldemort seems confused by the silence. He raises his wand, hesitates, and then kills. But what should be a moment of horror, the death of a hero, becomes just another spell in a series of spells. There is no dramatic pause, no recognition in Voldemort's eyes, no realization of what Harry is doing. The enemy doesn't even get the chance to misunderstand the act. It's mechanical. The most important death in the story is treated like a technicality. The issue here is not just fan expectation, it is narrative necessity. In storytelling, the climax must deliver emotional resolution. Harry's death is not just a plot point, it is the soul of the story, the place where all themes converge. Love, sacrifice, destiny, death, and choice. All of them are meant to meet in that forest. But the film forgets that climax without catharsis is empty. It gives us a forest, a boy, and a flash of green light. But it forgets to give us the human truth behind it all. It would have been easy to fix. We've seen Harry speak with quiet conviction before. We've seen him defy Voldemort even when broken. In Order of the Phoenix, he screams that he has something Voldemort will never have: love. That was a line that defined the war. Why not give him another like it? Why not let Harry say the name of the one person he missed most, Sirius? Why not let him whisper, "I forgive you," or "I'll see you soon"? It didn't have to be long, just real. The truth is, silence can be powerful, but only when it contrasts with what came before. Harry had never been silent in the face of danger. His silence in this scene doesn't feel like strength, it feels like emotional absence. In The Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore looks into Harry's eyes and says, "You are the true master of death because you are not afraid to die." That line sets up the moment we're discussing, but the film gives no payoff. There's no sense that Harry has accepted death with bravery. He just waits for it like a man standing in a queue. Number 17, Half-Blood Prince, makes no sense. Half-Blood Prince. The name Half-Blood Prince hovers like a shadow over the entire sixth film. It is uttered with mystery, with reverence, even with fear. The battered potions textbook, scribbled full of ingenious improvements, cursed spells, and cryptic comments, bears that title with pride. This book is the property of the Half-Blood Prince, a name that suggests nobility, tragedy, defiance, perhaps even rebellion, a title that promises answers, complexity, and meaning, and yet, when the moment of revelation finally comes, it collapses in on itself like a punctured balloon. "I am the Half-Blood Prince," Severus Snape proclaims dramatically to a bewildered Harry. But why? The film never says, it never even tries. This is not merely a case of an unexplained detail, it's a gaping wound in the narrative logic of the movie. For the better part of 2 hours, viewers are teased with the question, who is the Half-Blood Prince? This enigma becomes a thread woven through the story's tension. The textbook offers Harry a glimpse into the mind of a genius, someone who outshines even Professor Slughorn. The title, printed in sharp ink, carries weight, but the resolution to this mystery offers no thematic closure. In fact, it isn't even a resolution. It is a label slapped on Snape's identity with the force of a punchline, and then discarded. In the book, J.K. Rowling at least tries to provide a foundation, We are told that Severus Snape was the son of Tobias Snape, a Muggle, and Eileen Prince, a witch. This makes him, by Wizarding World definitions, a half-blood. And there it is, the wordplay. Prince was his mother's maiden name. So, the half-blood prince is a self-styled title that merges lineage and blood status. But even in the book, this explanation is sparse and awkward. In the film, it's non-existent. The line is uttered, the camera lingers on Harry's stunned face, and then the plot moves forward, as if the significance of the name never mattered. The absurdity of the moment lies not in the mystery's outcome, but in the fact that no one questions it. Not Harry, not the teachers, not even the audience is given a chance to pause and ask, why would Snape, a man so fiercely private, name himself anything at all, let alone something so emotionally charged? He was not a flamboyant showman. He did not seek recognition or fame. In fact, Snape spent most of his life hiding who he was, so why would he ever scrawl this moniker in a textbook he knew would be passed down? The silence is deafening. What's more, the nickname is tonally inconsistent with the character. Half-blood prince sounds noble, even arrogant. It reeks of pride and grandiosity. But Snape's youth, as we learn across the series, was defined by humiliation, bitterness and shame. He was bullied at Hogwarts, mocked for his appearance, drawn to dark arts as a means of protection and control. He was not someone who would take pride in his blood status. If anything, he would have resented it. So again we must ask, why the title? It is here that the storytelling logic completely breaks down. The sixth film uses the name as a device to build suspense, not as a meaningful reflection of character. And when the truth is revealed, it rings hollow. In literature, a revelation should deepen our understanding of a character. It should illuminate motivations, flaws, or desires. Instead, this twist does the opposite. It obscures Snape further, painting him with a brush that doesn't match the portrait we've seen for 6 films. There is no alignment between title and identity. Consider also the complete lack of curiosity on Harry's part. The film ends without him ever pursuing the meaning behind the name. He does not ask Dumbledore, does not research Eileen Prince, does not ponder the emotional weight of the phrase. Half-blood prince might as well have been potions dude. Its potential is squandered, its narrative thread cut prematurely. And that's where the absurdity becomes most apparent. It was a mystery for mystery's sake, with no payoff. Snape is one of the most complex characters in the entire series. His choices, allegiances, and inner torments define much of the moral ambiguity of the saga. So to attach to him a nickname that feels so flimsy, so melodramatic, without ever exploring its roots, is to flatten him. It reduces him from a nuanced anti-hero to a cartoonish figure of vague mystique. The title serves no purpose in advancing our understanding of who he is or what he wants. Even from a symbolic perspective, the name is poorly chosen. The idea of half-blood is loaded in the wizarding world. It evokes prejudice, classism, and the toxic ideologies that Voldemort represents. Snape, having grown up marginalized for being half-blood, should logically reject that label. Yet the title suggests that he embraced it, perhaps even celebrated it. This directly contradicts the persona we see, especially in his relationships with characters like Lily Evans, who was Muggle-born. Why would he highlight the very thing that contributed to his alienation? There's also the question of the word, prince. If this were merely a pun on his mother's surname, it would already be thin, but it's more than that. It implies grandeur, royalty, destiny. But what prince was Snape? He did not come from wealth, nor did he possess political power. His childhood was bleak, his family dysfunctional. Nothing about his background suggests princeliness. If anything, he was the opposite, a lonely boy in a neglected home, steeped in dark magic and self-loathing. The title is not just meaningless, it's ironic, and not in a way that adds depth. This is especially jarring when we compare it to how names function in the broader Potter universe. Consider Tom Marvolo Riddle, which becomes I am Lord Voldemort. That is a transformation filled with menace and meaning. It speaks to identity, ambition, reinvention. The Half-Blood Prince should carry similar weight, but instead it feels like a throwaway line in a poorly edited draft. It does not transform Snape. It does not reveal anything. It does not resonate. Even worse is how the film sidelines any emotional response to the name. There is no flashback, no visual tie to Eileen Prince, no moment of introspection. Snape's proclamation is meant to shock, but it doesn't even register as significant. Imagine if the film had shown us a young Snape watching his mother, a proud but struggling witch from the old magical family of the Princes. Imagine if he had taken the name in memory of her, an act of reverence or of rebellion. Instead, we get nothing, just a sentence. The tragedy is that this could have been a powerful theme. A boy who reclaims a name. A man who crafts an identity from fragments of pain and pride. A wizard who, scorned by his peers, builds a secret version of himself to hide behind. The Half-Blood Prince could have been his armor, his alter ego, but without context. It's just a riddle with no answer, a title without a tale. J.K. Rowling gives us the tools to imagine a more meaningful story. In the book, Snape's history is more richly detailed. We know about Eileen Prince and her troubled marriage to Tobias Snape. We see glimpses of young Severus at Spinner's End, unloved and unwanted. The nickname then becomes a small rebellion, a name he chose for himself because the world would not give him one with dignity. But the film discards this subtext entirely. It strips the title of emotion and motive, and what's left is absurdity. This failure is particularly noticeable because the sixth film excels in other areas. The cinematography is moody and rich. The acting is some of the best in the series. The relationship between Harry and Dumbledore is portrayed with care. But this one core mystery, the one the film is titled after, is left to wither. It's as if the screenwriters thought the phrase itself was enough, that the cool-sounding title would carry its own weight, even without meaning. But it doesn't. And still, no one reacts. After Snape drops the line, Harry doesn't chase him for answers. He doesn't ask Hermione to look it up. He doesn't flip through the textbook again with renewed curiosity. It is forgotten, buried beneath the avalanche of events that follow. This silence isn't just a narrative flaw, it's an artistic failure. It's the moment where storytelling gives way to spectacle, where mystery turns to melodrama. The greatest irony of all is that Snape's true secret, his love for Lily, his role as double agent, his protection of Harry, are far more compelling than this empty nickname. These are the truths that define him. These are the legacies he should be remembered for. Not a random pseudonym in an old textbook. The title, Half-Blood Prince, distracts from the real story. It promises depth and delivers nothing. A mystery in fiction must serve a purpose. It must either transform the character or the reader's perception of them. The Half-Blood Prince does neither. It is a name without a face, a truth without a consequence, and in a series built so carefully on meaning and memory, that is perhaps the most absurd detail of all. Number 18, Staircase Melodrama with Hermione, Goblet of Fire. In the dim, moody light of Hogwarts's stone corridors, a particular scene unfolds in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire that has left many devoted fans of the book series perplexed, if not slightly embarrassed. It's the infamous stairway moment between Hermione Granger and Harry Potter, where emotion swells, but logic seems to falter. On the steps between floors, the two sit in an atmosphere thick with melodrama. Hermione, visibly distraught, voices her heartbreak and frustration, while Harry sits beside her like a speechless statue. The emotional weight is all on her shoulders, leaving him awkwardly mute, a piece of furniture more than a character. While meant to be touching, the scene slips into uncomfortable territory, not due to its intent, but its presentation, tone, and a strange choice of characterization. Hermione's words echo down the stairwell. "You should have asked me earlier." Her voice trembles, tears threatening to spill. She's talking about Ron. It's Ron who failed to ask her to the Yule Ball in time, and it's Ron who now sulks in jealous silence after seeing her arrive with Victor Crumb. This outburst is not just a reaction to teenage hurt, but seems constructed to ignite a romantic ambiguity that never existed in the books. Her accusation feels disproportionate, and what's more, it's directed toward Harry, a friend who has nothing to do with her romantic entanglements. Her grief becomes theatre, and Harry, the central figure of the saga, becomes a backdrop for her. Monologue. In the novels, the dynamics between Harry and Hermione are clear, unwaveringly platonic. J.K. Rowling made this evident time and again. When Harry describes Hermione in The Half-Blood Prince, he notes how she's like a sister to him, a phrase that seals any possibility of romantic ambiguity. Their friendship is built on loyalty and trust, unmarred by flirtation or confusion. Yet the film, perhaps striving for emotional depth or simply borrowing cues from teen dramas, undercuts this clarity with an artificial emotional intimacy, casting Harry and Hermione in a moment more befitting lovers than best friends. The result is a scene that feels borrowed from a different story. The camera lingers a little too long on Hermione's tearful face. She sits close to Harry, their shoulders brushing, the lighting soft enough to suggest romance. But for what purpose? Harry doesn't reciprocate, doesn't even respond in a way that offers comfort or deep understanding. He just listens, solemn and passive, his role reduced to an emotional sponge. It's a disservice not only to him, but to their dynamic. Where is the Harry who always jumps in to defend Hermione when she's hurt? Where is the fierce protector, the ever-loyal friend who would have said something, anything to lift her spirits? This awkward silence is not born of empathy. It's written into the screenplay as if to suggest Harry is overwhelmed by a deeper emotion, attraction perhaps, though it never comes to fruition. This implication misleads. It plants seeds that will never grow, attempting to insert tension where none belongs. The viewers are left with a question the books never asked. Is there something more between Harry and Hermione? For fans of the source material, this is not a question but a narrative error, a detour from the emotional truth that J.K. Rowling so carefully constructed. In contrast, the books handle the post-Yule Ball fallout with a tone that balances drama and realism. In The Goblet of Fire, Hermione confronts Ron in the common room, saying, "Next time there's a ball, ask me before someone else does, and not as a last resort." She is angry, but she's also sharp, controlled, and her words are directed at the right person. It's a confrontation rooted in emotional logic. Hermione doesn't cry alone on a staircase. She challenges Ron in front of everyone. Her pain is not private and whispery. It's strong, clear, and unmistakably honest. The shift to cinematic dramatization cheapens this strength, replacing fire with whimpering. In the film, her tears are framed as something fragile and romantic, but in the books, Hermione's emotion is always fused with agency. She doesn't just cry, she acts, speaks, and fights for herself. The stairway scene undercuts that identity, turning her pain into something soft, focused, and passive, as though heartbreak defines her more than her intellect or courage. For a character who punched Draco Malfoy in the face and brewed Polyjuice Potion in a bathroom, this is a reduction, not a revelation. Moreover, the scene's atmosphere mimics that of high school dramas, the kind where emotional outbursts happen in hallways, where friendships teeter on the edge of romance without clear resolution. But Hogwarts is not Riverdale. It's a place of danger, of mystery, of coming of age under extraordinary pressure. The stairway scene feels like it wandered in from another genre entirely, and it brings with it a tone inconsistent with the larger narrative. Instead of deepening the stakes of Hermione's feelings for Ron, it confuses them by involving Harry as an emotional crutch. The imbalance of the scene also lies in its staging. Why a staircase? Why not a more intimate, private location where real conversations might unfold? The choice of setting turns an emotional moment into something theatrical, like a staged confession. Hermione descending into emotion on literal stairs feels metaphorical in the worst way, as if she's spiraling downwards while Harry watches. It's staged for symbolism, but delivers only awkwardness. One cannot ignore the film's need for visual drama, but the sacrifice of character consistency for aesthetics is never a fair trade. This is not how teenagers truly behave, especially not Hermione Granger. She is not someone who loses composure in vague heartbreak. She is someone who defends house elves, calls out injustice, and argues with reason. Her emotional intelligence, so vivid in the books, is stripped away in this moment, and Harry is left in her shadow, mute and undefined. Harry's silence in the scene is perhaps the most troubling aspect, not because he should have comforted Hermione romantically, but because he should have said something, anything, as a friend. His lack of reaction makes him seem emotionally unavailable, or worse, indifferent. This is not the Harry who dove into the Black Lake to save Ron and Fleur's sister. This is not the boy who risked his life for friends over and over. Reducing him to an emotional bystander makes the scene feel hollow. Worse still, the film never revisits this moment. There's no payoff, no later discussion, no resolution. Hermione's tears fade, Harry's silence is forgotten, and the narrative moves on as if nothing happened. In storytelling, moments like these must lead somewhere, reveal something, or alter dynamics. Here, it's simply dropped, left to hang in the air like mist over the forbidden forest. Pretty perhaps, but empty. It becomes an orphaned scene, full of feeling but lacking consequence. In trying to give Hermione more screen time or emotional space, the film inadvertently creates confusion. Her real emotional journey with Ron is subtle, built across years of tension, disagreements, and reluctant admiration. Her moment of hurt deserved to be centered, but with the right person, in the right way. In the book, when she returns from the Yule Ball, the pain is there, but it's buried under pride and quiet fury. She's not begging to be seen, she's demanding it. The scene's subtext also misrepresents the trio's balance. By making Hermione emotionally dependent on Harry for this moment, the film disrupts the equal footing they share. Hermione is not the damsel, Harry is not the silent comforter. Their friendship is powerful because of its lack of romantic complications. They trust each other in ways that are profound precisely because there is no romance. The film cheapens that by adding ambiguity where there should be none. Even visually, the staging makes Harry and Hermione appear as a couple, seated close, framed in intimate lighting. The decision to show them like this implies a closeness that misleads casual viewers and contradicts the canon. In the books, Hermione never once wonders if Harry might ask her to the ball. Her eyes are always on Ron, and Harry is completely aware of it. The mutual platonic respect they have is what makes their bond unique. Misrepresenting that for cinematic flair is a betrayal of that bond. This is especially strange when considering how carefully the films often handle canon relationships. The slow blooming of Ron and Hermione, the tragic thread between Harry and Cho, the inevitable romance with Ginny, all are given space, albeit with flaws. But here, for a moment, the lines blur in a way that disrespects character growth. Hermione's tears were meant for Ron. Giving them to Harry shifts her emotional loyalty, even if only momentarily, and that feels wrong. What could have been done differently? The same dialogue, the same frustration, could have been delivered elsewhere. In the common room, perhaps, or after a confrontation with Ron. Giving Hermione space to express her anger without implying misplaced intimacy would have stayed true to her arc. Harry could have offered words of friendship, support, or even a joke to break the tension. But silence was the wrong choice. It left Hermione alone on those stairs, and it left viewers with a sense of dissonance. The truth is, Film adaptations require condensation and emphasis, but the stairway scene emphasizes the wrong thing. It highlights Hermione's romantic suffering, but through the wrong lens. It sidelines Ron, silences Harry, and rewrites Hermione's strength into something fragile. It fails to resonate because it doesn't feel earned. Drama is not born from crying on a staircase. It comes from tension, honesty, and risk. The books had all of these. This scene had only tears. In the end, what lingers from the staircase moment is not its emotional weight, but its tonal confusion. It asks us to care, but doesn't give us reason to. It gestures toward a relationship that doesn't exist. It pretends to add depth, but actually subtracts from three-dimensional characters. For those who love the books, it's a misstep, a well-lit, well-acted, and deeply misguided misstep. Number 19. Harry and Draco's Fist Fight, Half-Blood Prince. In the half-lit shadows of a Hogwarts bathroom, water dripping steadily from broken sinks, something strange unfolded. A moment that should have crackled with magical intensity instead stumbled into an awkward, jarring spectacle. Harry Potter, the Chosen One, and Draco Malfoy, his long-standing rival, met not in a duel of wands and incantations, but in a flurry of fists and shoves. Two wizards trained in charms, curses, and transfiguration, boys who had battled Death Eaters, dodged hexes, and mastered spells far beyond their years, suddenly reduced themselves to a brawl that wouldn't have looked out of place on a Muggle playground. This was not the wizarding world we were promised. This was confusion packaged as drama, violence masquerading as character development. The scene in question from Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince isn't just unexpected, it's nearly absurd. In the film, Harry discovers Draco in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, brooding in front of a cracked mirror, and after a short confrontation, the situation boils over. What follows is not an exchange of hexes or even a defensive shield spell. Instead, they lunge at each other like brawling teenagers in a football locker room. There are no stunning spells, no Protego, no Expelliarmus, just fists and rage and a whirl of water. And as they tumble and grapple like common muggles, the magical world seems to melt away. For a franchise built on the strict laws of spellcasting, the sudden descent into physical violence feels like a betrayal of its own logic. From the very first year at Hogwarts, students are taught control. They are taught discipline. They are told that even a flick of the wand has consequences. In The Philosopher's Stone, Professor Flitwick insists that even pronunciation matters. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa. In The Goblet of Fire, Moody, Barty Crouch Jr. in disguise, demonstrates the unforgivable curses with chilling intensity, hammering home the idea that magic is not to be used thoughtlessly. Yet here, in the 6th installment, that very foundation crumbles under a tide of adolescent testosterone. The books were never devoid of physicality, but they reserved it for desperation. When Harry punches Draco in Order of the Phoenix after Malfoy insults his mother and Sirius Black, it is explosive and rare, and it takes place in a moment of overwhelming grief. But even then, it is a brief spark, quickly contained by Professor McGonagall. What we see in the film version of Half-Blood Prince goes far beyond that. It's prolonged, violent, and, worst of all, devoid of magic. It is not the act of two skilled wizards in conflict. It is two boys who have momentarily forgotten who they are, where they are, and what tools they possess. The jarring contrast between magical realism and teenage melodrama is made even more uncomfortable by the setting. The bathroom, dim and cold, soaked in silence and water, is not the dueling arena for future heroes and villains. It's a place of vulnerability. Draco is crying, wrestling with his impossible task, murder Dumbledore or let his family die. Harry, on the other hand, is consumed by suspicion and hatred. But instead of channeling that tension into a magical confrontation, one that could explore their psyche through the very spells they choose, the film resorts to a spectacle of flailing arms and punching fists. This deviation from magical combat is not supported by the source material. In the book, the scene is very different. There is no fistfight, there is no wrestling. There is instead a swift and brutal spell. Harry catches Draco off guard and uses sectum sempra, a curse he found in the Half-Blood Prince's annotated potions book. Blood spurted from Malfoy's face and chest as though he had been slashed with an invisible sword. The text reads, "The horror of the moment lies in the speed and unexpected violence of magic, not in physical force." Snape arrives moments later, horrified, and heals Draco's wounds. It's a moment of reckoning for Harry, not because of a fight he won, but because he realizes he used a spell he didn't understand and nearly killed someone. The book delivers a powerful lesson about magical responsibility. Harry is devastated by what he's done. He tries to get rid of the textbook. He begins to fear the darkness growing inside him. This is moral complexity. This is the cost of power. The film, however, muddles the message by framing the incident as the climax of a brawl. Sectum Sempra becomes an accident in the heat of physical combat, not the reckless use of a forbidden spell. The depth of Harry's guilt is diluted, the focus shifting from the consequences of magical ignorance to the chaos of an ugly bathroom fight. This change also undermines the character of Draco Malfoy. In the book, Draco is isolated, terrified, caught in a task far beyond his capacity. He has become a reluctant pawn in a war he barely understands. The bathroom scene is one of his most vulnerable moments. It is where he breaks. When Harry attacks him, it feels like a violation, not just of school rules or magical conduct, but of a fragile soul unraveling at the seams. The film strips that nuance away. Draco becomes a physical opponent, not a tragic one. His emotional turmoil is pushed aside in favor of a clumsy scuffle, and the opportunity for empathy is lost. It's important to remember that Hogwarts is not a school of warriors. It is a school of magic. Every lesson, every tradition, every punishment is steeped in enchantment and consequence. Duels, when they occur, are regulated and ritualized. Even in times of great crisis, magic is the language of confrontation. Consider the duel between Dumbledore and Voldemort in the Ministry of Magic. Fire, water, shattered glass. Each movement a testament to control and skill. There is violence, yes, but it is arcane, elevated, symbolic. What happens between Harry and Draco in the film is neither symbolic nor magical, it is simply crude. The decision to depict the scene this way raises uncomfortable questions. Was the creative team attempting to appeal to a younger, perhaps more action-oriented audience? Were they afraid that a purely magical confrontation lacked cinematic weight? Did they believe that fists carried more emotional impact than spells? If so, they misread the soul of the story. Because in the wizarding world, violence is never meant to be ordinary. It is not a punch. It is a curse, a hex, a flick of the wrist, with centuries of knowledge behind it. To abandon that is to abandon the world J.K. Rowling created. The visual contrast is also glaring. Wands are extensions of a wizard's self. They are not tools, but conduits of emotion, of identity, of intention. When Harry uses Sectum Sempra, it should be the moment when he realizes his power can hurt. It should be a moment of fear, not rage. By placing that spell in the middle of a fist fight, the film makes it look like a final blow, a last-ditch defense mechanism. It loses its sinister beauty. It loses its warning. This confusion of tone damages both characters. Harry in the book is horrified by what he's done. In the film he looks stunned, yes, but not transformed. There is no deep reflection, no sleepless night, no return to the room of requirement to hide the book with trembling hands. That entire subplot, one that shapes Harry's relationship with power, with Snape, and with himself, is hastily skimmed over. Without that remorse, the whole idea of magical responsibility begins to fade. Snape's reaction is another casualty. In the book, he's cold but furious, aware of the spell's origin. His silent seething, his harsh scolding, it all ties into the mystery of his identity as the half-blood prince. In the movie, his appearance feels rushed, his response muted. The emotional electricity between him and Harry, the tension of secrets shared through scars and spells, is dampened. Snape becomes a nurse, not a figure of dread. Perhaps the worst part is the lost opportunity for cinematic brilliance. A true magical duel between Harry and Draco could have revealed so much. Draco's desperation, Harry's rage, the influence of the dark spellbook. It could have drawn out their fears and pride and shame, weaving together visuals and character. Imagine water rising and freezing, spells ricocheting off mirrors, silent curses bursting through steam. Instead, we are given a scuffle in a puddle. This is not to say that physical emotion has no place in Harry Potter, but it must serve the story, not sabotage it. The world is too carefully constructed, the rules too well established for such a slip. The audience knows these characters, they know what magic means, they know what happens when it is used in fear or hate. To strip that away for the sake of drama is to underestimate the intelligence of both the world and its watchers. The awkwardness of the scene doesn't lie only in the choreography but in the storytelling failure. In a moment that could have been rich with internal conflict and moral danger, we are handed something flat. It plays out like a teenage tantrum, not a turning point. The magic is not only missing, it is disrespected. Fans noticed. Many asked why the confrontation wasn't more faithful to the book. Others wondered if this was meant to humanize the characters, to remind us they are still boys, but that humanity already existed in their voices, their choices, their mistakes. No, they did not need to throw punches to feel real. They needed to wield their wands with trembling hands, to speak spells with uncertain hearts. That is what makes them human. The scene ends with Draco bleeding, Harry panting, and Snape scowling, but the deeper wound is to the story itself. The scene forgets where it lives, it forgets the rules, it forgets the wonder, and for that brief moment the world of Harry Potter cracks, not because of a spell gone wrong, but because of a punch thrown right. Number 20. Harry's lame disguise at the wedding, Deathly Hallows Part 1. Of all the moments in the Harry Potter film saga that provoke a frown or a puzzled look, few are as jarringly awkward or illogically staged as the scene at the wedding of Bill Weasley and Fleur Delacour in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. After narrowly escaping death and becoming the most wanted wizard in the magical world, Harry attends a social event, a public one, with scores of guests, many of whom he doesn't even know, and does so with barely a disguise. The absurdity is not just in the risk, but in how casually the entire situation is handled by the characters, as if the looming threat of death and capture had been temporarily forgotten for the sake of a few dance steps and toasts. The Ministry has fallen. Voldemort has seized control. Severus Snape sits as the new headmaster of Hogwarts. Death Eaters swarm London and the countryside alike. Harry is now undesirable number 1, with a bounty on his head and snatchers prowling the land. Yet in this moment of total collapse of wizarding society, he turns up at a wedding, not hidden in some enchanted attic or beneath an invisibility cloak, but standing openly among the guests, chatting and dancing. It is a moment that stretches logic beyond breaking. True, Hermione does cast a minor concealment spell on Harry before the event, changing his features slightly, but it's so minimal, so trivial, that it borders on laughable. There is no change to his height, his gait, or his posture. His voice remains unmistakably Harry's. He's not polyjuiced into someone else, nor does he don a magical mask or even a wide-brimmed hat to conceal his iconic scar. And if we are to believe that Death Eaters have a mechanism capable of recognizing Harry on sight, a premise supported later in the film when Snatchers are able to detect him despite further concealment, then why in Merlin's name would anyone let him attend a crowded party? It's not merely that Harry risks his own life. That alone would be foolish, but he also endangers every guest in attendance, from Auntie Muriel to Luna Lovegood, from Elphias Doge to the house elves in the kitchen. Every person at that wedding is vulnerable the moment Harry steps under the tent. One slip-up, one observer with a keen eye, and the Death Eaters could have descended upon the gathering with all the fury of Voldemort's new regime. Was that risk ever calculated, or did the Order of the Phoenix suddenly lose all tactical awareness? In the books, this moment is handled with far greater care. J.K. Rowling writes that Hermione had used a complex spell to alter Harry's features. He no longer looked like himself. He had a thick jaw and a large nose. Even his eyes were a muddy brown. While this is still not foolproof, it shows effort, planning, and a sense of the stakes. The disguise in the film is so subtle, so delicate, that even someone who has seen Harry only once might be able to recognize him. He looks like Harry Potter. He moves like Harry Potter. He talks like Harry Potter. It's almost as if the filmmakers expected us to ignore the obvious. This entire scene betrays the tone of danger that had been building steadily throughout the story. From the brutal attack on the Lovegoods to the kidnapping of Muggleborns, Deathly Hallows is a story of tension, fear, and survival. Every step Harry takes outside a safe house is a gamble, yet here, that urgency is swept aside. We are asked to believe that Harry can be present in a crowd of wizards and witches, many of whom are linked by blood or politics to the Ministry, and not be spotted. It's a suspension of disbelief that borders on insulting. The Ministry has been corrupted. Dolores Umbridge has returned to power. The Muggle-born Registration Commission is active, and yet no one at the wedding seems even remotely concerned that their gathering might be under surveillance. Mundungus Fletcher could sell them out. A guest's +1 might be a spy. The very fabric of the wizarding world is crumbling, but for one sunny afternoon, the characters forget they are in a war. They drink champagne and dance under fairy lights while the boy Voldemort wants dead stands nearby, lightly disguised by a charm that would fool only the most inattentive observer. Even Arthur Weasley, a man known for his cautious nature and loyalty to the Order, does not object. He greets Harry warmly. So does Kingsley Shacklebolt, one of the most strategic minds in the Resistance. If these seasoned wizards accept Harry's appearance at face value and raise no alarms, then we are left to wonder if they have all become deluded by the illusion of safety, or more cynically, if the scene exists merely because the filmmakers wanted to include a moment of joy before plunging the characters into the darkness of the second act. This would be forgivable if it weren't for the direct consequences. The wedding is attacked, not because Harry is recognized on sight, although that's entirely plausible, but because the Ministry falls and the protective charms break. This again makes little sense. Would the Ministry, now under Voldemort's control, not already have informants or detection spells in place? Would Harry's appearance at such a major event not have triggered alerts? It seems as though the timing of the attack is conveniently cinematic, not realistic, within the world's internal logic. Later in the film, Harry and Hermione are almost immediately captured by snatchers while using false names and having altered appearances. One snatcher even suspects Harry's identity just by looking at him. He looks a bit like him, though, bit like Potter, he says, and that's with a magically deformed face. How then did none of the guests at the wedding recognize him? How did Xenophilius Lovegood, the man whose obsession with the truth would later endanger the trio, not notice anything odd about this teenage guest with a lightning scar and a stiff posture? The wedding was meant to be a rare glimpse of beauty and tradition in a time of chaos, but its execution contradicts every established rule of the story's reality. The choice to send Harry, a fugitive, into an uncontrolled environment is so out of character for the Order that it makes one question the seriousness of their cause. These are the same people who performed a sky-bound, high-risk aerial escape from Privet Drive, risking their lives and using Polyjuice Potion to disguise Harry among decoys. That entire operation was meticulously planned, yet here they throw all caution to the wind. Tonks and Lupin are present. Mad-Eye Moody, though now dead, had instilled in them a culture of paranoia and vigilance. The fact that none of these warriors raise objections to Harry's presence in a room full of magical strangers is baffling. The filmmakers seem to want us to believe that love and celebration somehow shield the characters from logic and consequence. It is a beautiful sentiment, but one that undermines the tension and risk so central to the plot. The moment also betrays Harry's own instincts. He knows he is being hunted. He has seen friends suffer because of him. At the end of Order of the Phoenix, he distances himself from others to protect them, but now he stands amid clinking glasses and swirling robes as if forgetting that just days before his face was on every wall of the Ministry. It's inconsistent with his character arc, which had been defined by self-sacrifice and vigilance. One might argue that this is meant to show the cost of war, the desire to cling to moments of normalcy. But even that interpretation doesn't hold up. There are safer ways to honor tradition. Harry could have watched the wedding through a mirror or been given a concealed position nearby. Instead, he stands in the thick of it, a walking target, and the world, inexplicably, looks the other way. We cannot ignore the impact this has on the viewer's immersion. For 2 hours, we are asked to buy into a world governed by magical rules and deadly consequences. But when those rules are bent or ignored for the sake of convenience or sentimentality, the foundation cracks, the stakes feel artificial, the danger seems selective, the magic, once bound by structure and consequence, becomes arbitrary. This scene could have worked with just a bit more thought, a full disguise, a background role, a clear explanation of protective spells or barriers, but instead we are given the cinematic equivalent of waving a red flag in front of a dragon and expecting not to be burned. It is a scene that looks good on the surface, the dress robes, the music, the fire whiskey, but beneath that it collapses under the weight of its own contradictions. Perhaps the saddest part is that this wedding could have been powerful. It could have been a rare moment where the war's human cost is reflected, a couple choosing love despite the darkness, a gathering of survivors and fighters who understand the risk but accept it with full awareness. But instead, the moment feels like a tonal detour, a decision driven by aesthetics rather than narrative truth. Even Fleur, who has always been portrayed as pragmatic beneath her beauty, would surely question the wisdom of inviting a fugitive to her wedding. And Bill, now scarred by Fenrir Greyback, has learned firsthand the cost of exposure. Yet they both smile and dance, seemingly oblivious to the danger standing among them. It's not just unrealistic. It's a disservice to characters who have been through too much to be this naive. What makes Harry Potter powerful is its commitment to consequence. Actions have ripple effects, choices matter. From Sirius Black's escape to the Triwizard Tournament, every decision leads to pain or progress. But in this scene, there is no weight, no cost, just a strangely cheerful interlude before chaos returns, leaving us to wonder if anyone, including the writers, was really paying attention to the world they built. Number 21, Glass Overload at the Ministry, Order of the Phoenix. In the heart of the Department of Mysteries, a room filled with whispering orbs and eerie blue light, the book describes a chilling, suffocating tension. The prophecy chamber is quiet but heavy with dread, its shelves towering and precarious, ready to fall at the slightest mistake. But in the movie adaptation of Order of the Phoenix, all that careful mood is brushed aside in favor of something else, something baffling. When Harry and his friends arrive, the scene unfolds with a barrage of sleek glass panels and glowing blue neon. It looks more like a fashion-forward art installation than the forbidden inner core of the Ministry of Magic. And while visual creativity is welcome in any adaptation, here the atmosphere feels strangely sterile, as if the danger has been swapped for decoration. In the book, the gravity of the situation is conveyed with urgency. There was a loud crash and a scream from Ginny. One of the shelves had broken and fallen on her, Rowling writes. The weight of the prophecies, both literal and metaphorical, comes down hard. Every step taken in that mysterious room threatens collapse, both of the surroundings and of their mission. But in the movie, all those orbs are gone. Instead, characters sprint across spotless floors with seemingly no purpose. There's no tension, no fragility, no looming threat. Instead of shelves laden with fragile knowledge, we get hollow expanses of transparent surfaces that serve no purpose except to reflect flashes of magic. Why is everything made of glass? In a magical world where security and secrecy are paramount, where the Department of Mysteries holds the most classified information in Wizarding Britain, would its chambers truly resemble a high-concept showroom? Glass is the most impractical material imaginable in a place that's meant to contain unknown and volatile magical phenomena. Not only is it fragile, but it's also transparent, hardly ideal for a department built on secrecy. The filmmaker's choice to flood the chamber with glossy, translucent elements replaces narrative tension with abstract beauty at the cost of logic and immersion. In the film, the battle is reduced to a disorienting whirlwind of smoke and streaks of coloured light. Death Eaters swirl around like phantoms, appearing and vanishing with black smoke, while the Order members reply in white mist. This visual binary might seem clever at first glance, a stylized way to separate good from evil, but it strips the duel of its grit and impact. Where in the book there is panic, close calls and bloody consequences, the film prefers a ballet of wand movements without stakes. It becomes impossible to follow who's doing what or why. There's little spatial logic or continuity. The characters drift like ghosts through a set that does more to confuse than immerse. Bellatrix Lestrange, arguably one of the most dangerous and theatrical Death Eaters in the series, is introduced in this moment. In the novel, her presence oozes dread and madness. She mocks Sirius, torments Neville, and ultimately delivers one of the most devastating blows in the series. Come out, little baby," she sings, taunting Neville with twisted delight. Her insanity is intimate, terrifyingly personal. In the film, however, Bellatrix is reduced to a snarling figure who flits across scenes without narrative weight. Her role in Sirius's death is muddied by direction that emphasizes flair over substance. The moment of Sirius Black's death is perhaps the most tragically emblematic of the film's failure to grasp the heart of the scene. In the book, it is abrupt, meaningless, and coldly final. Only the one who had the power to vanquish the Dark Lord, born to those who have thrice defied him. The prophecy falls, shattering, and so does Harry's godfather. A flash of green light, a body falling through the veil. That's it. No time for last words or heroic poses. It's the horror of death without closure. The movie, however, tries to turn this into cinematic poetry. Sirius doesn't just fall, he drifts. The veil is no longer a mystery, but a shiny archway with fluttering effects undermining the surreal terror of the original description. In Rowling's world, magic is dangerous, unpredictable, and deeply bound to the emotions and intentions of the caster. Duels are not elegant dances, but life-threatening confrontations. When Dumbledore fights Voldemort in the book, it's described as a true clash of titans where fire, water, and snake explode into existence. Each spell matters, each counterspell is desperate. In the film, this scene turns into a slick, visual showpiece. There is no visible fear, no desperation, just flashes of red and gold, sleek, swirling camera moves, and a bizarre detachment from the stakes. It becomes a fantasy light show devoid of tension. Where were the protections? The Ministry of Magic, the seat of magical government, apparently allows unauthorized teenagers to enter its most secretive departments with ease. In the book, this is acknowledged as an extraordinary feat, a breach made possible only because Voldemort himself manipulated Harry into it. But the movie never bothers to explain how Harry, Hermione, Ron, Neville, Luna and Ginny infiltrate the department. They simply appear and the story barrels forward. No guard checks, no alarms, no magical wards. It makes the entire wizarding world look not just fragile, but laughably incompetent. The battle choreography is another sore point. In the novel, every movement feels improvised, chaotic, but grounded in urgency. Harry is desperate, ducking between shelves, yelling for his friends, trying to protect the prophecy. Spells miss, people scream, blood is spilled. But in the film, characters seem to run in circles. The environment is so sparse and open that there's nowhere to hide, no real strategy. They just throw spells in random directions while gliding dramatically from one frame to the next. It looks cool, but says nothing. There's no fear of death, no sense that anyone might actually be hurt. One of the most frustrating changes lies in how magic is portrayed. Rowling consistently emphasizes that magic is not just about shouting words and waving wands. It requires skill, willpower, and knowledge. In the Department of Mysteries, the kids are outmatched but still resist because of their training and bond. Yet the film turns spellcasting into something that resembles a laser tag match. There's no incantation, no tactical use of spells, no magical creativity, just streaks of light and gusts of smoke, stripping the scene of the uniqueness that makes wizarding duels so fascinating. The Hall of Prophecies in the book is eerie and claustrophobic. Its towering shelves and cold atmosphere underscore the weight of destiny. Prophecies aren't just fragile orbs, they are loaded with meaning, waiting to explode with consequence. When one breaks, a voice spills out an echo of fate. And either must die at the hand of the other. This line is monumental. In the film, however, the prophecy becomes a vague object Harry picks up without much reaction. Its weight, both literal and symbolic, is never felt. The destruction of the prophecy is also anticlimactic. No echoing voice, no gasping realization. It just shatters like any piece of cheap glass. Neville Longbottom's growth in the book becomes clear in this battle. Though terrified, he stands firm. Dumbledore's army was supposed to be about doing something real, he had said. During the fight, his bravery shines, especially when he's injured but still defends his friends. In the film, our Neville is barely distinguishable from the rest. His courage is hidden behind the dazzle of camera cuts and the shapeless action. The moment where he refuses to abandon Harry is lost. We don't see his pain, his loyalty, or the full weight of his transformation. Luna Lovegood, too, is a victim of this flattening. In the book, she is precise and effective in the battle, her strangeness masking a quiet strength. She conjures spells with skill and helps lead the others out. But in the film, she becomes a ghost-like presence, drifting through scenes like a dream. The battle could have been her chance to reveal hidden depths, but the direction doesn't give her space to shine. Instead, she's barely there, and her contribution is forgotten in the flurry of meaningless effects. The set design, however visually ambitious, sacrifices narrative coherence. Why are there huge glass panels floating mid-air? What purpose do they serve in a secure underground ministry? Where are the doors, the exits, the paths of escape? The film constructs a setting that looks magical, but doesn't behave like it. It's disconnected from the internal rules Rowling carefully established. Magic in the books has structure, spells have limits, rooms have purpose. But the Department of Mysteries in the film is just a swirling, echoing void where logic takes a back seat to aesthetic indulgence. The veil, so critical to Sirius's fate, is another missed opportunity. In the novel, it's described as haunting and inexplicable, a portal to death itself. "There's something in there," Harry whispers, sensing the power beyond it. Luna hears it too. It suggests mystery beyond comprehension, something ancient and terrifying. But in the film, the veil is merely a set piece. There's no aura, no sound, no invisible pull. Sirius falls through it, and it looks like he just slipped through curtains. The tragedy is diluted, the moment passes visually clean but emotionally numb. Even Voldemort's appearance feels off. When he finally reveals himself, it should feel apocalyptic. The Dark Lord, no longer a myth, now stands in the Ministry, surrounded by shattered glass and broken lives. But instead of leaning into the horror, the film opts for style. He arrives like a video game boss, elegant and deliberate. His duel with Dumbledore should have shaken the Ministry's very foundation. But the set remains intact, polished and pristine. The scene lacks the devastation one would expect from two of the most powerful wizards alive, tearing through reality. And then there's the moment when the Ministry officials arrive and see Voldemort, confirming Harry's claims. This is a seismic shift in the political story arc. In the book, Cornelius Fudge is stunned. "He's back," he whispers, the Ministry's denial crumbling. That line is crucial, but the film rushes through it. The emotion is brushed aside, the transition to chaos glossed over. We don't feel the shock, the collapse of an illusion that's gripped the wizarding world. The truth lands with a thud instead of an earthquake. Ultimately, the battle in the Ministry is not just a missed opportunity, it's a distortion. The scene that should have been the emotional and thematic climax of the film becomes a hollow exhibition of effects. Characters lose their complexity, stakes are replaced by sparkles, the rules of magic are bent or ignored. The audience, instead of being pulled deeper into the world, is pushed back by the sheer artificiality of it all. What should have been one of the darkest, most transformative moments in the story becomes a bright, empty performance. The Ministry, meant to be a fortress of secrets and dread, ends up feeling like a glass cage with nothing inside. Number 22, the epilogue 19 years later, Deathly Hallows Part 2. The platform at King's Cross Station shimmered with steam and sentiment. In theory, it was meant to be the perfect send-off. The boy who lived, now a man, standing with his wife and children ready to pass the torch to the next generation. But what was supposed to be a moment of catharsis for millions around the world somehow veered into an uncomfortable parody of itself. The final scene of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, the much-anticipated 19 years later epilogue, promised emotional closure, but instead stumbled over a series of awkward choices, turning a chapter of legacy into an internet meme. Harry Potter stands at the platform, watching the Scarlet Hogwarts Express puffing into place, the sound of wheels and whistles echoing a journey he once made under very different circumstances. He is surrounded by familiar faces, Ron, Hermione, Ginny, but something feels off. The man in front of us, bearing Daniel Radcliffe's features beneath layers of aging makeup, does not exude the quiet wisdom of a father who once defeated the darkest wizard of all time. Instead, he looks like a tired accountant at the end of a bad week, his expression more weary than wistful, his demeanour burdened rather than at peace. Rupert Grint's Ron, clad in a mustard-coloured sweater that does him no favours, is equally difficult to place. The awkwardness in his posture and the strange stiffness in his interactions suggest a man unsure of himself, though Ron in the epilogue was meant to be confident, humorous, and settled. Meanwhile, Emma Watson's Hermione is the least visually altered, yet that only magnifies the imbalance between the characters. The trio looks like they've arrived for a PTA meeting rather than a moment of generational transition. At a magical train station, it's a failure of makeup, yes, but also of atmosphere. And then there's Ginny. Bonnie Wright, always subtle in her performance, is encumbered with a dowdy costume and aging hair that transforms her into someone far removed from the fierce and passionate young woman fans had come to admire. She resembles, as many critics pointed out, a high school chemistry teacher, well-meaning but exhausted. Her maternal tenderness is drowned beneath the blandness of her appearance. The visual storytelling, which should have uplifted the moment, inadvertently diminishes her presence, leaving Ginny a shadow in a scene where she should have stood with quiet strength. The book's epilogue was never universally adored, but it had emotional weight. J.K. Rowling offered a glimpse into peace, hard won. The final line, "All was well," closed the saga with the grace of a lullaby. In the film, however, the same moment lands with a thud. The characters deliver their lines with an unnatural cadence, perhaps weighed down by the sheer responsibility of ending a decade-long cinematic journey. They seem as though they are playing adults rather than having become them, a subtle but crucial distinction. The scene begs for intimacy but receives only awkwardness. Albus Severus Potter's nervousness about being sorted into Slytherin is meant to parallel Harry's own fears from the first book. It is a brilliant narrative circle, meant to connect generations and show that even heroes have anxieties. But the gravity of that moment is lost amid stilted dialogue and an overall tone that feels strangely detached. When Harry tells his son, "You were named for 2 headmasters of Hogwarts," the line should carry the weight of history, sacrifice, and love. Instead, it floats in the air, unsatisfying and oddly hollow. In the book, we are told, he had a thin face, knobbly knees, black hair, and bright green eyes. It's a quiet reminder of the child Harry once was, watching his own children with a mixture of wonder and disbelief. That subtlety is missing in the film. Instead of evoking the magic of growing up, the scene feels manufactured, a forced bow on a package that has already been beautifully wrapped. The viewers are not moved to tears but to distracted chuckles. The emotion does not land, it evaporates. The problem is not just the visual execution but the pacing. The epilogue moves too quickly, rushing through dialogue like a checklist. One can sense the filmmakers hurrying toward the credits. The camera lingers on faces that have already said all they could say. There's no room for reflection, no pause to feel the full weight of 19 years. The music swells as if trying to make up for what the scene itself cannot deliver, but the heart of the moment has already been lost. Perhaps it was the burden of expectation. After 8 films of darkness, death and triumph, audiences longed for emotional release. Instead, they were given a scene that played like a stage reenactment. The nostalgia was there, but it felt unearned, superficial. We wanted to feel what Harry felt, a quiet pride, a melancholy joy, but what we received was a tableau of characters going through motions. Their children wave, the train departs, and the credits roll, leaving behind a disquieting sense of incompleteness. Daniel Radcliffe himself once admitted that the scene was difficult to perform, saying it was hard not to feel like they were just kids in wigs. And that's exactly the problem. The aging makeup and hairpieces draw attention to themselves, distracting from the emotional core of the moment. Instead of watching characters grow older, we see actors pretending to be older. The illusion is broken, and once broken, it cannot be repaired within the span of a single scene. There is irony here. The saga that introduced us to magic with such care, beginning with Hagrid's simple, "You're a wizard, Harry," ends with a sequence that feels utterly unmystical. No enchantment lingers on platform 934 in this version. The station is well lit and too clean, too real. It lacks the golden hue of memory, the warmth of a story closing. The farewell we wanted is swallowed in sterile lighting and awkward pacing. The final wordless nods from Harry to his son are meant to say everything. They say nothing. The awkwardness would not have mattered if the emotion had been allowed to breathe. Instead, what we witness is a rushed goodbye. Hermione is barely given any lines. Ron offers a joke about driving a muggle car that feels out of place, a desperate attempt to insert levity. The camera pans away too soon, as though afraid of letting the moment linger. It is strange to see a franchise so careful with its build-up allow the ending to fizzle, to falter, to fall flat. The costumes do little to help. While the books speak often of Harry's untidy hair and Ron's hand-me-downs, the film's wardrobe department opts for beige, grey, and other soul-draining hues. There's no personality in their attire, no hint of who these characters have become. The sense of continuity is lost. The scene tells us time has passed, but it does not show us how these people have changed or grown. It tells, rather than shows, a cardinal sin of cinema. It is especially jarring considering the emotional high that precedes the epilogue. Voldemort's defeat, Snape's memories, the final battle, all are handled with intensity and reverence. The audience is emotionally raw. And then this scene appears not as balm, but as confusion. The tonal shift is too abrupt. The epilogue doesn't give resolution. It feels like an afterthought, a postscript. It is the coda that should sing and instead mutters. The fans deserved more, not more spectacle, but more sincerity. The books gave us just that. The scar had not pained Harry for 19 years. All was well. It was a whisper of peace after volumes of chaos. The film needed to echo that silence, that serenity. Instead, it clutters the moment with overacting and overdesign. The intimacy of Rowling's prose is replaced with visual noise and emotional distance. This is not a condemnation of the actors who gave everything they had through 8 films. Rather, it is a reflection on choices made in tone, costume, direction, and editing. A soft lens, warmer light, gentler music, these things could have transformed the same dialogue into something poignant. Instead, everything feels too sharp, too loud, too literal. The scene needed poetry, it received prose. Even the children, meant to represent hope, continuation, seem strangely subdued. There is little magic in their eyes, no flicker of excitement about boarding the train to Hogwarts. The camera does not pause on them long enough to establish any sense of future. They are props, not people, and if the children are props, the scene becomes a photograph, not a memory, staged, static, forgettable. In the end, the epilogue fails not because of what it shows, but because of what it lacks. It lacks quiet, it lacks depth, it lacks that gentle closing of the book that makes a reader sigh and sit in silence. The legacy of Harry Potter deserved an ending that made the world hold its breath. Instead, it made the world laugh, awkwardly, and not in the way one does when recalling an old friend, but in the way one does when something earnest stumbles into self-parody. This was meant to be the moment when Harry let go, when we let go, but instead of holding our hands and guiding us to that conclusion, the film pushes us out the door and closes it too quickly. The magic is still there, buried beneath the makeup and missteps, but it is hard to find in a scene that does not seem to believe in itself. Number 23, Chilly Welcome at the Leaky Cauldron, Prisoner of Azkaban. Of all the moments in the Harry Potter films that feel jarringly inconsistent, few are as perplexing as Harry's sudden, shockingly cozy arrival at the Leaky Cauldron in The Prisoner of Azkaban. This scene, which should have carried the weight of legal consequences and tension, instead unfolds like a calm tea break in the countryside. When Harry runs away from the Dursleys' house after inflating Aunt Marge, he doesn't face an interrogation or a warning or even a stern look. Instead, the Minister of Magic himself, Cornelius Fudge, greets him like a beloved nephew returning home from a school trip. It is this moment, warm, quiet, and completely devoid of logic, that stands as one of the most awkward and illogical scenes in the film series. This is the same Ministry of Magic that just a year earlier in the Chamber of Secrets sent Harry a howler-like letter warning him that he would be expelled from Hogwarts for performing a simple levitation charm, a spell he didn't even cast. Dobby the house elf had used magic, but Harry was punished immediately with no investigation or even a proper chance to defend himself. The letter stated plainly, "Any further spell work on your part may lead to expulsion from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." It was a chilling reminder of the rigidity of magical law enforcement, especially regarding underage wizards. So, how can it possibly make sense that in The Prisoner of Azkaban, after committing an undeniably major offense, inflating a muggle like a balloon and fleeing his guardian's home in the middle of the night, Harry receives nothing but gentle hospitality? He literally breaks the law, in a loud, public way and runs away without any intention of going back. This time the ministry doesn't send a howler, or an owl, or even a representative from the improper use of magic office. They send the minister himself, and he brings tea. Cornelius Fudge is a man who fears public embarrassment above all else, a man whose career thrives on appearances. When he finds Harry Potter sitting in a London alley in the dead of night, does he seize the opportunity to reinforce the importance of magical lore? No, he behaves like a kindly grandfather. He assures Harry that everything is fine, brushes off the serious magical misconduct, and places the most famous wizarding miner in a hotel room, alone, as if that's not the least bit concerning. What makes the moment so bizarre is that there is no explanation, not in the film, not in the dialogue, not in Fudge's demeanour, for this complete reversal of values. The law that nearly cost Harry his place at Hogwarts is suddenly meaningless. The justification, if any, is never voiced. Is it because Harry is famous? Because Sirius Black is on the loose? Because the ministry wants to keep him close and under surveillance? None of these ideas are explicitly explored, leaving viewers to speculate in frustration. In the books, the situation at least attempts some narrative justification. In the Prisoner of Azkaban novel, Fudge is described as being nervous and uncharacteristically kind, which hints at ulterior motives. "We don't send people to Azkaban just for blowing up their aunts," Fudge says, brushing off the incident. The book makes it clear that the ministry is bending rules to protect Harry from Sirius Black, who has escaped Azkaban and is believed to be hunting him. But even then, the absurdity of the situation is hard to ignore. Since when has the Ministry of Magic ever bent over backward to not punish someone, especially a student? The film adaptation, however, robs this scene of even that thin layer of context. Gone is any real tension or sense of urgency or mention of Sirius Black's intentions toward Harry. Fudge's motivations are blurred into vague politeness. There is no sense that a crime was committed. There is no reflection on Harry's emotional state after running away. There is only quiet, warm lighting, a cozy bed, and a sense that none of this is strange or worth further inquiry. Even more bewildering is how the leaky cauldron becomes a holding cell in disguise without being acknowledged as such. Harry is told to stay put, not to wander into Diagon Alley too early, to behave. And yet nobody seems alarmed that a teenage boy is now living alone in a magical inn. Who is signing for his food? Who's taking legal responsibility for him? What if he wanders into Nocturne Alley again, as he accidentally did in the Chamber of Secrets? Is he being watched, protected, monitored? None of this is addressed. In a world that is supposedly governed by magical laws and bureaucracies, the total absence of structure here is baffling. Mrs. Weasley, for instance, never questions why her son's best friend has been left in a London pub by himself for 2 weeks. Arthur Weasley, a government official, makes no mention of legal consequences or parental involvement. Even Tom, the hunchbacked innkeeper of the leaky cauldron, behaves as if teenage wizard boarders are a common occurrence. "Room 11's free, Harry," he mutters with a grin. That's it. That's the level of adult concern this moment receives. And what about Dumbledore? Surely the headmaster of the most prestigious wizarding school in the world would be involved in a situation where one of his underage students has broken the law, run away, and now lives in a pub. But he never appears. There is no owl from Dumbledore, no Patronus message, no sense of alarm. The entire wizarding world, supposedly brimming with protective spells, detection charms, and legal codes, turns a blind eye. This strange oversight is not just a lapse in logic, but it breaks the emotional consistency of Harry's journey. Moments before, he was filled with fear, rage, and desperation, fleeing the Dursleys' home in the dark, uncertain of where to go or who to trust. That mood is replaced, in the blink of an eye, with calm detachment. The film skips over the psychological weight of Harry's choices, choosing instead to comfort him and the audience with the soothing aesthetics of candlelight and tea kettles. There is something deeply unsettling about how quickly the narrative forgets its own stakes. Harry is alone. He has no money beyond what he managed to take. He has no adult supervision. He has just committed magical misconduct that would see any other student expelled or worse. Yet the film is in such a hurry to usher in the plot about Sirius Black and time-travelling hippogriffs that it forgets to linger on this moment, to let it breathe, to make it feel real. The decision to treat this scene with such breezy indifference undercuts not only the film's internal logic, but also the audience's investment. If rules are discarded so casually, why care about them later? If the Ministry can bend laws whenever convenient, why did they seem so rigid in the past? Why did Fudge, a man so obsessed with public perception, allow himself to be seen coddling a teenage runaway? These questions remain unanswered. It also raises larger issues about the wizarding world's treatment of minors. The idea that Harry, or any teenager, would be left alone in a hotel without guardianship should be shocking. And yet it's played off as if he's merely on holiday. The wizarding world is portrayed as whimsical, yes, but it is also governed by rules and traditions. To see it discard both so flippantly undermines its own credibility. Even the tone of the scene feels mismatched. The cozy visuals, the cheerful lighting, the pleasant music all suggest comfort and safety. But Harry is in a vulnerable, unstable position. He should be confused, worried, even frightened. Instead, he behaves as if everything is perfectly ordinary. It's a tonal dissonance that makes the entire sequence feel hollow, even artificial. What could have been a moment of tension, of reckoning, of character development, is instead wasted. Imagine if the scene had shown Harry wrestling with guilt or fear. Imagine if Fudge had threatened punishment only to hold back for hidden reasons. Imagine if Harry had been warned, truly warned, about the danger of Sirius Black. All of these would have added layers of drama, consistency, and suspense. Instead, we are left with a narrative blind spot, a hole in the logic so wide that it invites disbelief. The scene at the leaky cauldron is ultimately a missed opportunity, a turning point treated like a footnote, and for a story so careful about consequences and character arcs, that is a rare and unfortunate mistake. Number 24, reparo for glasses, but not for wands. Chamber of Secrets. The battered Ford Anglia roared above the Scottish countryside, its enchanted engine coughing in protest as it carried two boys toward their forbidden destination. It was not supposed to be like this. Hogwarts Express had already departed, and with it the safe and proper way into the world of wizards. But Harry Potter and Ron Weasley had made a reckless choice: steal Arthur Weasley's bewitched car and follow the train to Hogwarts. It was a scene crafted for adventure, with the wind in their hair, the thrill of rebellion in their hearts, and the magical school looming ahead like a sanctuary. Until, of course, the Whomping Willow decided otherwise. The crash was thunderous. Branches as thick as tree trunks smashed the car with wild fury, denting metal and shattering glass. Ron screamed. Harry braced himself. The steering wheel spun out of control as the ancient tree pounded the vehicle. When the chaos ended, the Ford Anglia had ejected its passengers and their trunks in a storm of leaves and groans. Ron's wand had snapped cleanly in half, and Harry's glasses were flung to the ground, cracked and useless. The damage was clear. One boy was nearly blind, the other wielded a wand that could backfire at any moment. But somehow this moment of consequence unravelled too easily. Hermione Granger arrived, of course, with her usual impeccable timing. Observing the sorry state of Harry's glasses, she muttered, "Oculus reparo," and the lenses restored themselves instantly. The crowd of young viewers sighed in relief. Vision saved, problem solved, except it wasn't. Behind this tidy solution lies one of the more uncomfortable and illogical inconsistencies in the entire film series, a moment that reveals the narrative's selective application of magical logic. In The Chamber of Secrets, we are asked to accept that a child like Hermione can perform magic so advanced it undoes the destructive force of a whomping willow on fragile glass, but no one even considers applying similar logic to Ron's shattered wand. Why does one object, a relatively inexpensive accessory, receive immediate magical attention while another, a vital tool for survival in the wizarding world, is left to remain dangerously broken? Ron's wand is not just a stick of wood, it is his sole means of defense, education, and magical participation. And yet all through the film he's stuck with a wand held together by spellotape, endangering everyone around him. There is an added irony that in the first film, The Philosopher's Stone, Harry is almost expelled from Hogwarts for accidental magic performed outside school. The Ministry of Magic sends him a warning letter when Dobby shatters a pudding at the Dursleys. The rules were clear then, no underage magic outside school, especially not in the presence of muggles. But in the second film, no one bats an eye when Hermione performs a clearly unauthorized spell at the train station. There are no owl-delivered warnings, no disciplinary action. It's as if the rules have evaporated the moment they become inconvenient to the plot. In the book, Harry Potter and The Chamber of Secrets, Hermione uses oculus reparo on the train, which slightly shifts the context. She pulled out her wand, muttered oculus reparo, and Harry's glasses sprang back into shape. Even this, however, raises questions. The spell is performed before reaching Hogwarts, still technically in a muggle environment, and certainly not under school supervision. Why does the trace, the magical tracking spell used by the Ministry to detect underage magic, not register this act? The inconsistency is glaring, especially when viewed in light of the Ministry's strict enforcement policies shown earlier. But even if we accept this odd lack of accountability, the more frustrating issue is the spell's effectiveness versus its arbitrary limitations. If reparo works on shattered glass, why does it not work on wood? Why is a wand, a crafted, delicate item imbued with magical properties, not fixable by the same magic that mends splintered lenses? The film never explains, the books are vague, and the characters, for once, don't even bother asking. It is a moment of narrative convenience that breaks the internal logic of the wizarding world. Ron's broken wand becomes a running gag throughout the film. It backfires during class, causes a slug vomiting episode, and ultimately contributes to a dangerous accident in the chamber itself. But no one, not a teacher, not Dumbledore, not even Hermione, suggests repairing it with magic. They all seem resigned to letting a 12-year-old attend a school full of monsters and secrets with a defective weapon. And yet a pair of glasses is worthy of immediate magical restoration. There is something unsatisfying in the way the plot leans into selective magic. When it serves the story, spells are all-powerful, precise, and convenient. When it complicates matters or reduces dramatic tension, suddenly the same magic is ineffective or forgotten. One cannot help but notice how many dangers in the Chamber of Secrets would vanish if logical magical applications were considered. Repair the wand, prevent the slug spell, repair the wand, avoid accidents in dueling club, repair the wand, eliminate risks in the final battle with the basilisk. But then the story would lack its chaos, its accidental humour, and the eventual need for Ron to replace the wand altogether. In short, the broken wand serves the plot more than it serves sense. This bias in magical logic reflects a deeper issue in the film adaptations. The world-building, so rich and complex in the novels, often buckles under the pressure of cinematic brevity. Where the books provide layers of explanation, wand lore, ministry surveillance, and the technical limitations of certain spells, the films gloss over these in favour of fast pacing. In doing so, they occasionally contradict the very rules they establish. A spell like reparo, simple as it may seem, suddenly becomes an all-purpose fix when applied to accessories, but unusable when a vital object demands it. Let us not forget that wands are not just any object. As Ollivander reminds us in Philosopher's Stone, the wand chooses the wizard. These are personalized instruments of immense power, linked to their owner's magical core. They are not mere wooden sticks that can be glued together like broken toys. Perhaps then Reparo lacks the complexity to restore something as nuanced as a wand. But if so, why does no adult explain this to Ron? Why does no professor take his wand away for safety reasons? Why is there no magical alternative offered in the meantime? Once again, silence answers where logic should speak. Meanwhile, the glasses, non-magical, factory-made and unimportant in the grand scheme, receive their spell and vanish from the narrative as a concern. It is a strange moment that exposes a hierarchy of magical attention. If a spell can be used to instantly fix Harry's broken visual aid, it sets a precedent. That precedent, ignored or violated elsewhere, becomes a fracture in the storytelling. It teaches viewers, perhaps unconsciously, that magic works when the plot wants it to, not when it should. There's also the issue of risk. Ron's broken wand is more than a disability, it's a hazard. It rebounds spells, twists charms into curses, and functions like a misfiring weapon. Allowing him to walk around with such a dangerous object should alarm the staff. If Hogwarts is meant to be a sanctuary, why permit a child to endanger himself and others because he can't afford a new wand? If money is an issue, surely Dumbledore, who funds dragon-breeding scholarships and runs a phoenix aviary, could spare a galleon or two for a replacement. But no such generosity is mentioned. Ron is left to his own devices. It seems comedy outweighs care. The scene of Harry's glasses being repaired thus stands out as emblematic of a larger inconsistency. It reveals the absence of follow-through in the magical system. It shows how certain characters are prioritized. Harry, always the center of attention, has his needs met with instant magic, while Ron, the ever-loyal sidekick, is expected to suffer through malfunctions for the sake of comic relief. Hermione, the brightest witch of her age, is capable of fixing glasses at 12, but not once considers applying that brilliance to Ron's wand. The imbalance is stark. Even more puzzling is the lack of adult intervention. Where is Professor McGonagall with her stern sense of responsibility? Where is Flitwick, the charms master? Where is Madame Pomfrey, who heals bones and regrows skin but does not think to question Ron's injury-prone spellcasting device? The absence of adult logic is deafening. It makes Hogwarts feel less like a school and more like a theatre of magical absurdity, where safety is optional and consequences bend around narrative needs. Harry's glasses, though iconic, are ultimately just glass. Their repair solves no crisis, changes no battle, and affects no outcome. Ron's wand, however, becomes a pivotal element. It nearly derails his education. It nearly kills him. It nearly kills others. Yet it is allowed to remain broken, treated as a running joke. The inconsistency lies not in the spells themselves, but in the story's attitude toward them. And so, in one swift moment of oculus reparo, the narrative exposes itself. It reminds us that this world, as enchanting as it may be, sometimes chooses drama over coherence, spectacle over structure. It reminds us that characters are not always treated equally, not in power, not in safety, and not in the attention their problems receive. The glasses mend, the wand does not. The rules are enforced selectively, the logic applied thinly, and the magic, for all its wonder, becomes a tool of convenience rather than a system of belief. Even for fans who adore the films, such moments leave behind a small sense of unease. They are the creases in the spellwork, the seams in the illusion. And once you've noticed them, they never quite vanish. Just like a pair of cracked glasses, hurriedly patched and worn as if new, but always a little off, always a little fragile under scrutiny. Number 25. The Mysterious Shard of Sirius's Mirror, Deathly Hallows, Part 1. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 1, there is a moment that feels more like a jolt than a revelation. A broken piece of mirror flashes blue in Harry's hand. He gazes into it and sees what looks like a fragment of Albus Dumbledore's face. Later, he uses it to call for help while trapped in the basement of Malfoy Manor. Miraculously, Dobby appears. The house elf rescues Harry and his friends, but the mirror never gets a name nor a backstory. Viewers who never opened the books are left puzzled, disoriented, and excluded. They saw a mirror, but what they didn't see was sense. In the book version of Deathly Hallows, J.K. Rowling took the time to plant the mirror far earlier in the series. In Order of the Phoenix, Sirius Black gives Harry a pair of two-way mirrors as a way to communicate privately. "Use it if you need me, all right?" Sirius says. The gift is heartfelt, symbolic, something a godfather would give his godson in a world where letters are intercepted and fireplaces watched. But Harry, in his grief after Sirius's death, throws his mirror into the bottom of his school trunk. For 2 whole books the mirror disappears, just like Sirius himself. The films never show this gift. There is no mention of Sirius handing Harry a mirror. There is no dialogue that hints at this relic from the past. And so when Harry suddenly pulls out a shard of glass that can show him Dumbledore's eye, the moment lands not as magic, but confusion. The emotional weight is gone. The plot point becomes hollow. A new viewer watching the film sees a deus ex machina, not a device wrapped in memories and loss. What makes it worse is the ambiguity. The eye Harry sees doesn't even clearly belong to Dumbledore. It could be Aberforth, his brother, something the book explains. But the film doesn't provide any clues. The face appears almost spectral in the broken mirror, and Harry reacts as if he's seeing a trusted friend. The audience is left guessing. Who is this? Why is it helpful? What just happened? The scene isn't mysterious in a thrilling way, it's confusing in a careless way. This moment underlines one of the worst tendencies in the later Harry Potter films: to sacrifice story clarity for visual pace. The broken mirror might look cool on camera, glowing with ethereal blue light, but magic, in Rowling's world, only works if the rules are respected. Magic must have boundaries. When you break those, the magic becomes cheap. The mirror in the film isn't grounded in rules or relationships. It's just there. The book explains that the mirror fragment Harry carries comes from the two-way mirror Sirius once owned. After Sirius's death, Aberforth Dumbledore acquires the other half. He uses it to keep an eye on Harry without ever revealing himself. "I was the one who sent Dobby to you," Aberforth says in the book. "I saw you in the mirror." This line reveals not only how Harry was found, but also builds on a deeper theme, that help can come from the unlikeliest sources, even in silence. That theme is lost entirely in the movie. Without that background, Dobby's arrival feels like divine intervention. The house elf appears out of nowhere, an oddly placed savior. For viewers unfamiliar with the books, there is no logical sequence. One moment Harry is in despair, and the next, help arrives through an unintroduced object. It's not storytelling, it's shortcutting, and shortcuts kill tension. The irony is painful. The film adaptation chose to leave out the original mirror scene in Order of the Phoenix, likely for time. But by the time Deathly Hallows came around, they needed that mirror for a key plot point. So, rather than go back and explain it, or reintroduce it with a flashback or voiceover, they simply inserted it, hoping viewers wouldn't notice the gap. But they did. Fans talked about it on forums. What? Is that mirror Harry keeps looking into? Who is the man inside it? Where did it come from? It's especially disappointing because Sirius's mirror could have been a beautiful symbol. It's the last gift Harry ever received from him. It could have reminded viewers of Sirius's death, of how grief follows you into the final battle. In the book, Harry's use of the mirror is haunted. He sees the blue eye and wonders if he's going mad. Is it Dumbledore? Is he seeing things? Is it a hallucination? That unease makes the moment resonate. In the film, the tone is different. Harry trusts the mirror instantly. There's no doubt, no fear, just a blue glow and a silent understanding that we, the viewers, are not invited into. Aberforth Dumbledore, who plays a subtle but significant role in the final book, is also left behind. His motivation to help Harry stems from his connection to Albus and his quiet resentment of his brother's legacy. When he finally meets Harry in the book, he says, "I watched you through the mirror, thought you needed help." Those words carry weight. Aberforth becomes a silent guardian, a reminder that not all heroes wear robes of grandeur. The film reduces him to a bartender with a goat and one line of dialogue. The mirror's appearance in the book is not just about rescue, it's about surveillance, concern, legacy. It says something about how people watch over each other in secret, how protection sometimes hides in the background. That texture is lost in the film. By stripping the mirror of its backstory, the filmmakers strip the moment of its meaning. What should have been a moment of hidden connection becomes a jarring narrative leap. In Rowling's world, objects have memory. Wands recognize their masters. Horcruxes resist destruction. Mirrors can show your deepest desire or your godfather's eye. When you introduce an object without a memory, you betray that logic. The mirror in Deathly Hallows, Part 1, breaks that consistency. It behaves like a magic trick, not a magical artifact. Even the framing is odd. The film shows Harry holding the shard, whispering into it, almost praying. Yet we never see him find it. We don't know when he got it or why he started using it. It just appears in his bag like an extra sock. This kind of narrative insertion would be fine in a lesser universe, but Harry Potter was built on rules, and that's what made it different. That's what made fans believe in magic. The mirror is also part of a much larger theme that's ignored in the film, that of inheritance. Harry carries the past with him, not just in scars, but in relics. The cloak of invisibility, the Marauder's map, Sirius's mirror. These are not just tools, they are legacies. When the film fails to acknowledge the origin of the mirror, it breaks the chain, the legacy disappears, and with it, the weight of memory. Critics have long argued that films must be different from books. Adaptations require sacrifice, but some sacrifices are too great. In this case, removing the mirror's story didn't just trim fat, it amputated muscle. It hurt the very structure of the scene, because the viewer no longer understands why Harry trusts this object, why Dobby appears, or how any of this connects to the world they've been watching for 7 movies.